The Long Road to True Happiness by WierdRandomTina. Chapter 38. Project Song and Smiling Taste Buds. Poppy tripped on her carpet as she hurried over to her dresser. Thankfully her major stumble didn't mess up her hair, which she had just spent the last half hour fighting with. She had experimented with different looks, a loose bun, but no matter how many times she adjusted it, she just could not get it to look right. Out long and curled, it looked nice, but too formal. And pigtails, she wasn't quite satisfied with them either. So the Pink Queen ended up settling with her usual simple ponytail, but to spice things up a tad, she added half a dozen shiny blue streamers and tied a big blue bow over her usual scrunchie. Standing in front of her bright pink dresser, Poppy surveyed her array of colourful and cute accessories, debating on which ones she would add some nice accents to her usual blue dress. After a minute she reached for her favourite anklet, the dainty one with pretty white daisies. After sliding it onto her right ankle, she reached for the little box in the middle of her dresser. Purple, vintage, with a faded white logo in the corner. It was impossible for Poppy not to smile whenever she laid eyes on that box. She gently picked it up, opened it, and her smile grew even warmer as she stared down at the colour-changing rose pendant. The sight of the beautiful necklace gave her butterflies in her stomach. She'll be 80 years old, and it will still take her breath away. Branch's soft voice was still so clear. It is very special, and that's why I want you to have it, to show you how special you are to me. The unconditional love and pure certainty in his glistening eyes. Oh, how the memory gave her goosebumps! Poppy had received many extraordinary gifts over the years. Beautiful ones, thoughtful ones, shocking ones, unique ones, special ones. But this one was all those traits combined, and taken to a whole other level. If she had to explain to someone how much this necklace meant to her, she didn't think she could. There was no words to describe it. It was an out-of-this-world sensation that only she could ever experience. Poppy intended to put the lovely gold necklace on. But as she was about to take it out of the box, she hesitated. She wasn't sure why, but something was holding her back. She shrugged and closed the box with the necklace still inside. There are a few crazy parties happening later today, and I do not want to leave it on by accident and risk damaging it. I'll wear it next time. Poppy gave the box a gentle kiss, then returned it to its safe spot on her dresser. She reached for another necklace instead, the colourful beaded one that the junior Trollings had made her for her 22nd birthday. Lastly, Poppy reached for her green crown to attach to her headband. This crown was only temporary. The traditional new royalty crown, handed down through the generations, given at the princess or prince's coronation ceremony to symbolize their upgraded status. It was given to her father when he was named king, and his father before him, and so on. At some point, no specific time frame, usually a few weeks or to a few months, the new king or queen would acquire a proper crown, one that is unique to them. Poppy was looking forward to that, but first she would need to discuss design ideas with Saturn and Chenille. I have lots of spare time this week. I'll see if I can arrange an appointment with them. The sooner it gets done, the sooner they can make it, and the sooner I can wear it. With her dainty anklet, decorated ponytail, beaded necklace, and leafy crown, Queen Poppy was ready to go. Happy as a humworm, the vibrant magenta troll danced and sang her way toward the western part of the village. It was a beautiful autumn day. The sun was shining in the cloudless sky, making the forest surprisingly warm. All the trees were bright yellow and vivid orange, with lovely splashes of crimson. Poppy's cheerfulness continued to increase as she neared her destination, the Smiling Taste Buds restaurant. Within a minute, the new and already popular restaurant came into view. Most of the outdoor tables were full, but one table in the centre caught her eye. Waiting patiently at one of the 4-seater tables was a handsome turquoise troll with thick navy blue hair. A giant smile spread across his face when he spotted her approaching, and it made her heart leap for joy. She would never tire of seeing that amazing smile. As she excitedly neared their table, her boyfriend stood up, arms opening wide. In one smooth motion, Poppy slowed her pace, gave him a quick kiss, and settled into his arms. He greeted her with a tender, "Nice to see you again so soon, sweetheart." She pulled back from the hug with a poorly suppressed smirk. "You too, sweetie pie." The silly nickname earned her a deadpan stare that quickly softened into a warm-hearted eye roll, followed by a muscular arm wrapping around her and yanking her visor. She let out a high-pitched giggle as his lips connected with her cheek and pressed firmly. Seeing all his cute reactions to her various nicknames was worth a million jars of rainbow sprinkles. Since making their relationship official 2 months ago, the young couple had easily adjusted to hand-holding, going on dates, playful flirting, cuddling, kissing. However, their pet names were still a work in progress. Sweetheart was Branch's go-to name for Poppy, and occasionally, Love. He also called her Angel a few weeks ago, but only once, and hadn't said it since. Truthfully, she was hoping he'd use that one again. For some reason, hearing Branch call her Angel made her swoon. Maybe she should tell him that? Nah, requesting a nickname somehow felt wrong. For him, Poppy usually stuck with Sweetie, but upgraded it to Sweetie Pie if the mood was carefree and a little silly. She knew it wasn't his favourite name, but she couldn't help it. It was so flipping cute. Besides, he had bluntly rejected all of her previous suggestions. Cupcake, muffin, pumpkin, cutie, lovebug, blueberry, sugar, dreamboat. Yeah, Poppy couldn't really blame him for not being a fan of those. They sounded like cute and sweet ideas in her head, but after hearing them out loud and saying them to his face, even she agreed they were too snappy for Branch. When Poppy called him a cute nickname, she wanted him to like it, or at least be slightly amused, or at worst respond with a light-hearted scowl. She did not want him to visibly cringe. While those teasing nicknames did provide a spark of humour for both, they were definitely a one-time use only. But for whatever reason, Sweetie Pie seemed to suit Branch so well. As a lovely bonus, it was a reasonably sappy name, and the only one he didn't openly disapprove of. She had also called him my man and handsome a couple of times each. He shook his head and rolled his eyes, but he didn't object. And she didn't miss the hint of purple in his cheeks, so those two certainly had some potential. Branch's exasperated reactions to her random nicknames were exaggerated. He really wasn't bothered by them. In fact, hearing Queen Poppy, the girl of his dreams, call him pet names that were reserved for couples warmed his heart in a way he never imagined. However, some of it was rather embarrassing. Cupcake, lovebug, dreamboat, and, of course, Poppy. She couldn't care less about whether or not trolls were in earshot. A few times he was quite sure she said it because there were trolls in earshot. Most bystanders chuckled or awed. Biggie burst out laughing at Cupcake. Cooper looked totally grossed out by Lovebug, and Guy spit his drink halfway across the room when he heard a dreamboat. Sweetie Pie wasn't awful. Branch hated to admit it, but that name was starting to grow on him. Growing like a weed, in fact. It baffled him, but he could even say that he enjoyed hearing Poppy call him Sweetie Pie. Who would have thought? But he was going to keep that bit of info to himself. If she ever found out, he would never hear the end of it. But Branch was a bit disappointed that he didn't have nearly as many nicknames to call her. He knew she'd love any nickname, even the cheesiest, dorkiest name in the universe. but silly nicknames weren't Branch's thing. He considered some of the traditional romantic names like Baby or Honey or Dear, but those all seemed like things he'd call her when they'd been together for a long time. He blurted out Angel once, but judging by the wide-eyed stare she gave him, maybe that one was also too much. Love was an okay name, but too plain. Sweetheart just came naturally, and worked very well for Poppy. Cute and light-hearted, but also meaningful and affectionate. They still used Branchifer or Poppifer, but only as a tease during casual, non-romantic moments. Or if she really wanted to bug him, she'd hit him with the good old Branchy. After ending the extended cheek kiss, Branch stepped back to get a proper look at his girlfriend's slightly altered outfit. "Did I miss the memo where we're supposed to dress up?"
"Nope, there's no memo. It just felt like doing something a little special. Because I was so flipping psyched about our first double date. Speaking of which, I take it Smidge and Milton aren't here yet?"
"No, not yet." Branch pulled out Poppy's chair for her. His gentleman gesture automatically made her brush her bangs out of her face. After she was comfortably seated, Branch took his own seat beside her. Instead of facing the table, they turned their chairs slightly so they could face each other. Branch continued, "Then again, we did say we'd meet here at 12:30, and it's not even 12:15 yet."
"True."
Poppy sighed dramatically with a look of fake annoyance.
"Well, then, I guess I'll just have to put up with just you for now. Gee, what a bummer."
Branch played along, shaking his head slowly with the same expression. "Yeah, how terrible it is that I have to spend alone time with such an adorable, beautiful girl." Poppy bit her bottom lip to try and hold in her giggles, but it didn't work very well. Her half-stifled chortles only influenced Branch to do the same. It was highly amusing to both trolls how cheerful the Queen had picked up on the former loner's sarcasm. However, instead of using it to make cold remarks, they now incorporated it into playful teasing and silly flirting. It was like their own secret language. Between giddy chuckles, Branch managed to splutter, "Poppy, you're a pain in the hair. You know that?" Poppy could barely form a sentence.
"Yeah, well, you're my grumpy pants."
Branch face-palmed with an overly loud smack. "Oh my gosh, what the hell was that?" By now the two trolls were giggling like maniacs. Poppy ended up plunking her head down onto the table. Branch was leaning all the way back in his chair, hands over his stomach. They had attracted some attention from nearby tables. Trolls were glancing over, grinning at the Queen and her boyfriend. Partly because they adored the couple's cuteness, and partly because it was such a delight to hear Branch laugh. As Poppy had predicted, after he had told the trollings the full story of his tragic childhood, the details of his past spread throughout the village, although not as quickly as she would have expected. In the following weeks, the many trolls had mentioned it to Poppy, how unfortunate the incident was, how they couldn't imagine what he went through, how sad it was that he dealt with all of it alone all this time, how great it was that he was finally happy. But few trolls had brought it up to Branch. As he had predicted, he received several "sorry to hear" comments, plus a few teary-eyed emotional rambles, but nothing overbearing. The village was still respecting his reserved nature, as Poppy had originally requested. After so many years of them misunderstanding him, trying to help him but unintentionally making it worse, things were finally turning around. Just like when Poppy first heard Branch's full story, the village experienced a burst of clarity and could now properly interact with the former loner. Not ignore him, but not attack him with friendliness either. Just respect him for being him. Being completely open about his terrible experience and not so sunny emotions, and being accepted by the village regardless of it, gave Branch a new kind of confidence. He no longer felt the need to hide a major piece of himself. He no longer had to worry about being judged, treated differently, or overlooked. His biography was unlike any other troll, but he was still part of Troll Village. And not just a minor part, a huge part. He contributed to the village in many ways no other troll has, or ever could. All along, even when Branch was grey as stone, he never actually wanted to be an outcast, but he was convinced that being an outcast was all he could ever be. Being excluded was what he deserved, so why long for anything else? He might as well just come to terms with it. And now, here that same troll was, laughing hysterically at a goofy joke with his wonderful girlfriend in the middle of a crowded restaurant. Poppy had never heard Branch laugh so hard, which only made her laugh even harder, which only made him laugh even harder. It was a never-ending cycle. Her eyes had started to water, and she was wheezing, while he was clutching his sore stomach. He had built up some laughing muscles over the last few months, but they weren't fully developed yet. Poppy cackled. What? What are we even laughing about? I don't know. You started it. Did not. Another full minute passed before the laughing fit finally died off, simply because they were struggling to take in air. Branch had rested his head on the table now too, facing Poppy. Still smiling despite his aching cheeks, he murmured, "What is wrong with you?" "Me?" Poppy tried to laugh again, but her throat was too dry, and it came out as a cough. "What is wrong with you?" "You are what's wrong with me." "Well," Poppy finally sat up, though it took some effort. "Unfortunately for you, I take that as a compliment, mister." She reached over to pinch his periwinkle nose. He tried to laugh, but flinched and said, "No, please, Poppy, no more laughing. I can't take it anymore." Regardless, there were a few lingering light giggles exchanged between them. After taking a minute to catch their breaths and rest, Poppy pulled out a tic-tac-troll game to calm down, and regain their sanity, before their companions arrived. Of course, Branch effortlessly won all 4 rounds. Her pretty pink face being adorably scrunched up in concentration wasn't enough to hinder his focus. She even tried batting her eyelashes and flirting with him on the final round, and he refused to be distracted. By the time Poppy put the game away, their humour had already been completely spent. Now that they could hold a serious conversation, she asked Branch, "So, did you manage to sleep okay last night?" He nodded, his blue eyes warm. "I did. There was only one dream, where I was singing loudly, and it put you in danger." He noticed her happy face droop in dismay. So he quickly added, "But everything turned out okay. The danger turned out to be a minor disturbance, and I dealt with it easily. When you and I were free to sing together, as loudly as we wanted." Poppy's shining smile returned. Then Branch asked her, with just a hint of concern in his voice, "What about you? Did you sleep all right last night?" "I did, yes. Honestly, I did. Now, I'm not going to lie. I was thinking about you most of the evening. And of course I was worrying a teeny tiny bit. I know you told me not to, but I couldn't help it. But it was not enough to stop me from having a good sleep." Branch looked relieved. "Good. I was hoping you weren't stressing over me the whole night, because, honestly, I felt great. Relaxed, content, even happy. I was completely comfortable."
"That's so good to hear, Branch. But listen, I know you want to try and deal with things on your own now, and I think that's great. I am so proud of you for taking that step. But I don't want you to think that means you shouldn't ask for my help anymore. I don't want you to forget that I'm still always here for you if you need me." He tenderly placed his hand over hers, looking her straight in the eyes with a sincerity that made her heart swell.
"I will never forget that, Poppy."
Just under a month and a half ago, a few days after Branch sang Can't Stop the Feeling in front of the village, he had approached Poppy in her pod. But instead of his usual warm expression, he looked troubled. His colours were still vivid, not faded at all, thank goodness, but seeing a frown on his turquoise face, where there should have been a smile, made her heart drop. He informed her that he overheard that song in the village. Poppy's heart sank even further. She put her arm around him and led him over to her bed. Once they were sitting on the edge, with his hand resting on top of both of hers, she softly asked, "What happened?"
Everything was going so well. I was feeling great, having a great time, listening to music, singing along, dancing. But then, all of a sudden, total, that song came on.
He wrapped his arms around himself and stared down at the carpet as the distress in his voice increased.
It wasn't even playing that loudly, but I couldn't get my breath. I started shaking, my heart was pounding, I felt sick.
Poppy leaned closer and practically whispered, "Did you have flashbacks too?"
Branch nodded, closing his eyes. Not as vividly as last time, but they were there.
So, what did you do then?
I just stumbled past some bushes nearby and into the woods. I just knelt there on the ground, hunched over, plugging my ears so tightly it almost hurt. I was trying to calm myself down, think of anything else. The music was no longer in earshot, but it was ringing in my head, as loud as if someone was blasting a stereo right next to me. Then, the next thing I knew, your dad was right beside me, his hand on my back. He told me he switched the songs, that everything was all right. He must have said it at least 3 times before it finally sank in, and I cautiously unplugged my ears. I slowly sat up, and he asked if I was all right. I said I was, but, like you, he could easily tell that I wasn't. He put his arm around me for a while, and then suggested I pay you a visit. He walked me here, and, well, here I am.
Wordlessly, Poppy wrapped both her arms around Branch. He returned her hug, burying his face into her shoulder. He found comfort in her loving touch, her strawberry scent and lilac shampoo, but it wasn't enough to eliminate all his distress. Branch chose not to mention how embarrassed he was that King Peppy had been the one to find him cowering on the ground in the woods. Of all the trolls who could have witnessed his panic attack, it had to be Poppy's father. No offence to the elder whatsoever, he had been very patient and compassionate, and offering the perfect amount of comfort. But Branch hated that the strong kin had seen him so vulnerable, and had to rescue him from his own insecurities. Poppy ended their hug so that she could cup Branch's cheeks and give him a slow and tender kiss. "Is there anything I can do for you?"
"Yes, there is," he answered immediately. "I have a favour to ask. I've decided I want to listen to that song. I want to be able to listen to the entire song, or even just most of it, without having a complete breakdown. I'm finally able to do all the things I never could before. Relax, have fun, socialise, dance, even sing. And I feel like this is the one final thing I need to accomplish in order to fully heal. I know it won't be easy. Currently I can't even say the title of the song. But I want to at least try. And I can't do it alone. Will you help me?"
"Oh, sweetie." Poppy pulled Branch into another hug. "You know what my answer is." The following evening, Poppy met Branch in his bunker, as he had requested. He concluded that he had been most comfortable in his familiar surroundings, especially since it was the only place in the forest where there were no risks of any interruptions or distractions. When Poppy arrived, her boyfriend was sitting on his couch,
looking as nervous as they first started hanging out. Even she was feeling some second-hand nervousness.
"Hey, Branch,"
she greeted him softly. He mumbled back, "Hey, Poppy." Instead of skipping or dancing like she would normally do, the Pink Queen walked over to him calmly, solemnly. He watched as she set up her portable pink stereo beside him on the couch, then settled close to him on his other side. Instead of looking at her, he stared down at the stereo. She heard him swallow the lump in his throat. His breathing was faster than normal, and he had started fiddling with the leaves on his vest. Branch was very nervous. She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder.
"It's all set up for you. The volume is at low, so just loud enough for you to hear it. When you're ready, just hit play. And if you feel the need to stop, it's that small red button there on the left side."
His reply was a small nod. After taking a deep breath and letting it out slowly, Branch reached his arm forward to press play, but his finger merely hovered over the button. He was struggling to move his hand forward, as if an invisible person had grabbed his wrist and was holding it back. Poppy noticed his turquoise hands start to tremble, so she started rubbing his shoulder.
"Take your time. There's no rush."
Branch nodded again, took another deep breath, then tried again and again. But his stubborn finger would not move any closer to the button. His struggling visibly increased, and finally he retracted his hand with a loud huff of frustration. "Ah! I can't do it!" His scrunched up face and ragged breaths indicated he was on the verge of breaking down. So Poppy wrapped both her arms around him.
Hey, it's okay. Branch, it's okay.
"What is wrong with me?"
"Nothing is wrong with you. Do you hear me? Nothing is wrong with you. This is a huge step for you. So just take it slow. Don't judge yourself so harshly. You're doing great."
Branch didn't make his pessimistic thoughts verbal. "Doing great? I'm not doing anything." After a minute, Poppy suggested he start with trying to say the title of the song before trying to listen to it. She continued the light massage on Branch's shoulder. For another minute, he stayed silent and focused on that sensation. However, even his girlfriend's loving touch did little to calm his nerves. Recognizing that procrastinating would not make this easier, and if his anxiety built up too much, it would overwhelm him, Branch quietly asked Poppy, Would you say it out loud first, please?"
"Sure."
The Pink Queen spoke in the gentlest whisper.
"Total eclipse of the heart."
He flinched slightly and took in a sharp, uneven breath, but otherwise he seemed to tolerate it. So she repeated it, a bit louder. Still okay. Once more, a bit louder, and he remained in control of his emotions.
"That's great, Branch. Really great. Do you want to give it a try now?"
For the first few attempts, only half of "total" came out of his mouth, but he forced himself not to get frustrated. Stay calm. Take it slow. Eventually, he managed to stammer each word, with long pauses in between. Gradually, he reduced those pauses, straightening out the stammers, until finally, total eclipse of the heart. Total eclipse of the heart.
Poppy was beaming. "There you go. That's excellent, Branch."
He was smiling too, and looked relieved. However, he was also looking exhausted. He could work on an intense construction project for 12 hours straight, and he'd never look this worn out. Poppy recalled a few times in the past where she had felt tired after being stressed out. Emotional situations consume a different kind of energy, and this was much more than just fretting over planning a fancy party or organising a new festival. Poppy suggested they take a break for now, and start the listening part tomorrow. Branch agreed before she even finished her sentence. Lastly, she asked if he wanted her to leave the stereo here, or take it with her. Could you take it? I know it's a pain bringing it back and forth, but I don't think I'll be comfortable with it being nearby.
Of course I can take it, and it's not a pain at all. That's why I brought this one. It's small and super easy to carry around.
Thank you, Poppy.
You're welcome. You're sure you're okay here by yourself?
Yes, I'm fine. His tone matched his words. I have some projects I'd like to get done around here before winter comes. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. And if you need me before then, you know where to find me. In the following weeks, Poppy and Branch continued their usual daily activities. Then, every other evening, give or take a day, the Queen would bring her little stereo over to the bunker, and together they would continue with Project Song, as she decided to label it. The name did manage to get a small chuckle out of him. On day 2, it began like the previous day. Branch was struggling with nervousness, and his finger, though it managed to hover a bit closer, refused to hit the play button. He was able to say the title without any issues. Poppy guessed he'd been practicing on his own, but listening to the actual tune remained extremely daunting. Eventually, he retreated his hand, though he didn't get frustrated this time. When he closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths, Poppy got a glass of water for him. After taking a sip with shaky hands and setting the glass down, Branch reached towards the stereo again and pressed the button. The piano instrumental started to play very softly. Poppy had her arm around him and felt him instantly tense up. With her head resting on his shoulder, she could hear and feel his heart thumping. Turn around. He was visibly shaking, and his breaths were becoming shallow gasps. Every now and then I get a little. Before Poppy could even blink, Branch's hand shot out and hit the pause button. She praised and soothed him simultaneously, until he stopped trembling, and his breathing returned to normal, which took no more than a minute. Poppy was impressed by her boyfriend's progress with Project Song. After 5 days, he was already at the start of the 3rd turn around line, and his anxiety was noticeably decreasing. He's getting so close to the chorus. At this rate, he'll be able to listen to the whole song in only a few months. So, on the 6th day / late in the evening, Branch was determined to make it to the chorus. As soon as Poppy sat down beside him, he pressed the play button. He was going to make it to the chorus. As the 3rd turn around approached, he felt his anxiety rising like boiling water inside him. But he was going to make it to the chorus. He could do that. Every now and then I get a little bit nervous at the best of all the years have gone by. His heart was pounding painfully against his ribcage. But he was going to do it. He felt nauseous, but he was going to push past it. He sat up straighter, feigning confidence. He was going to make it to the chorus this time. Turn around. Every now and then I get a little bit terrified, and then I see the look in your eyes. Branch, are you okay? He ignored Poppy's question and focused on the task at hand. The song. Total eclipse of the heart. He can make it to the chorus. It's only a few more lines. He can do it. Turn around, bright eyes. Suddenly the volume seemed to increase dramatically, though it was still set on low. The tune stabbed into his ears. Every now and then I fall apart. Branch, are you okay?
Poppy's second and more frantic question sounded like a whisper in the distance. Turn around, bright eyes. Flashbacks invaded his vision like a blinding light. A sharp, suffocating pain pierced his chest. The room started to spin like a whirlpool. Every now and then I fall apart. Poppy could only watch in horror as his face instantly turned as white as a ghost. His eyes rolled back and he slumped forward, losing consciousness. Branch's eyes flickered open, but all his senses were hazy. He was lying on the ground, with his head resting on something. He could faintly hear a voice and feel something touching his jaw. After a few seconds, his mind started to function. Poppy's desperate words were right by his ear. Her breath on his cheek. Branch! Branch, wake up! Branch! Branch, please! Please wake up! He figured out that his head was resting on her lap, and her arms were wrapped around him. One hand was supporting the back of his head, and the other hand cupping his jaw. Aside from Poppy's voice, everything was silent. There was no music playing. She must have shut it off. Only then did he realize what had happened. He blacked out. Poppy caught him as he collapsed, and was now cradling him, begging for him to come to. Very slowly, with her assistance, Branch sat up. His head was pounding, and he had to blink a couple of times to refocus his eyes. Once he could see clearly, he looked over at his girlfriend, and the sight of her made his nausea return. He had never seen such raw fear in her eyes. She looked absolutely terrified. When those eyes finally locked with his, she let out a massive sigh of relief and pulled him into a tight hug. Her body was firmly against his. He could feel her trembling, shivering as if she was freezing. He heard her sniffle and whimper as she buried her face into his shoulder, as if she were on the verge of tears. A stab of guilt pierced Branch's heart. He caused this. He hurt Poppy. She was trying to help him with his trauma, and now he had traumatized her. Despite her telling him multiple times to take it slow, despite his own caution telling him to take it slow, despite common sense telling him to take it slow, he did the complete opposite. Rushing out of my comfort zone never worked before. Why did I think it would work now? Branch had foolishly decided he could force away his anxiety, simply because he decided it was time for it to go away. After everything that's happened in my life, how could I believe that ignoring my feelings was the right thing to do? What a harebrain he was. Branch held his girlfriend tighter, but his grip faltered as tears started to stream down his turquoise cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She released her grip, but stayed very close to him. She was crying too. It's okay. No, don't. Please don't say that. It's not okay. This isn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. She wasn't okay. Just like the sleepover, when she had spent the entire night fearing he had lost his colours again after that nightmare. Branch assumed she'd be unbothered. He was so used to seeing the magenta girl extremely cheerful, completely carefree, effortlessly optimistic, that he had no concern about her feeling anything else. Nothing could upset or stress or scare Queen Poppy. Then, and now, he'd been so caught up in his own emotions, he hadn't even considered how his actions would affect her. I'm such a hairball. Since it was impossible to argue with his words, Poppy didn't even try. Instead, she started to wipe away his tears, but he gently pushed her hands away. I'm so sorry, Poppy. I know, she murmured with a sniffle. I know, Branch. I forgive you. You made a mistake, but now you can learn from it, right? He nodded. You'd think I would have learnt that before now. Yes, I will. I have learned. I had it set in my head that I could reach the chorus by the 5th try, and when I didn't, I felt like I'd failed. But it was an unrealistic goal, so it was a disaster waiting to happen. I promise it won't happen again.
His sincerity sparked a tiny smile on Poppy's face. She started wiping away his tears again, and this time he let her. Then she cupped his cheek and gently asked, "Why did you feel the need to push yourself like that?" When he didn't answer right away, she guessed, "Did you feel like you'd be disappointing me?"
Branch shook his head. "Not you in particular, just everyone."
He shifted in his seat before continuing.
"I don't want people to feel like they can't listen to that song when I'm nearby. I don't want them to scramble to change the song if it does come on. I don't want party planners to avoid including that song in their playlists, in case I show up. I don't want to be an inconvenience to the village."
He tried to look away, but Poppy gently guided his face back until their eyes met. "Let me tell you a little story. A few years ago, there was a huge Halloween party, and this troll, I won't say who, was invited but didn't want to go because he's terrified of spiders. So the whole crew of the party planners, plus the other guests, changed the decorations to accommodate that one troll, and made sure there were no spider-related items in the entire area. They were more than happy to go out of their way for this troll, and simply found other decorations to replace the spider ones, like more pumpkins or bats. Everyone has fears, and things that bother them, Branch, and yours are much more severe than most. It does not, I repeat, it does not make you an inconvenience or a disappointment." Branch's sweet little smile appeared, the one that occurs when she succeeded in reassuring him. He reached up to wipe away one of her stray tears and murmured, "Thank you. I really am sorry." She gave him a little kiss on the nose, and then his cheek, then his lips.
He continued, "I guess I also felt like I was disappointing myself. I don't want to have to run away every time the song comes on, or have an anxiety attack whenever I hear a snippet of it. I've come so far, and now it's just this one last thing I need to get past. I really thought I could do it, but I guess I should have known better."
No, Branch. You can and you will do it, but only when you're ready, not when you want it to happen. You need to build up to it slowly, otherwise it'll be too much of a shock for you. To lighten up the atmosphere a bit, Poppy added, "You need to learn patience. Remember you told me that when we first started hanging out?" Her little joke managed to make him chuckle.
"Yeah, never thought you'd be telling me that."
She chuckled too, when she made a suggestion. "Why don't we take a break from Project Song for a couple of days? Start fresh?"
He nodded. "Yeah, that would probably be the best idea. I don't want to risk pushing myself too far, or it'll do more harm and cause a setback instead of progress."
Poppy agreed with a loving smile. After a minute, the Pink Queen stood up with her stereo in hand. Branch thanked her for her support, apologizing once more, then kissed her goodbye. But she didn't leave. She just stood there, looking timidly at him. Before he could question her, she asked him, "Branch, will you stay with me tonight? Just in case you have a nightmare or you're feeling anxious, and then I'll be right there for you. But also, so I know you're okay." Branch gazed softly at his beautiful girlfriend, not missing the glimmer of fear still present in her eyes. Indeed, it would not be a good idea for him to be isolated after such a severe incident, but staying in Poppy's pod would be the best for her, too. No doubt she would fret over him being alone several miles away in the bunker, and she had dealt with enough stress because of him for one day.
It would be better for Poppy to witness him have a nightmare and have to comfort him, than her spend the whole night worrying about him, and then blame herself if he did have a nightmare and she wasn't there for him. So after some tasty junk food and silly joke telling, Branch snuggled into Poppy's bed, his face pressing into her soft hair on the back of her head, and his arm draped over her waist. Thankfully, both trolls had a restful sleep, feeling secure and safe in each other's touch. From that point on, Branch listened to the tune only until he started to feel some discomfort. He stopped at the familiar third "turn around" line, even though a small part of him felt like he could and should go further. No, that was not an appropriate risk to take. Take his time, build up gradually. The next day, he let the song go until "every now and then," and that was all. The next day, he increased it to "I get a little bit nervous." Bit by bit, word by word, Branch held off hitting pause for a few extra seconds each day. Each day, he came closer and closer to reaching the chorus. When he realized he could listen to the first few lines with minimal reaction, it gave him a spark of encouragement. He actually felt proud of himself. The most severe trigger for his anxiety, a massive part of his traumatic experience, and he was learning to deal with it. Over time, Branch was able to handle the first verse and the refrain with only a touch of unease and a slight increase in heart rate. He had been going along at a steady pace, but the chorus remained a challenge. One day, he made it to the end of "and if you only hold me tight," and then the next day he was feeling uneasy and had to pause at the beginning of the same line. Then he got stuck at "we'll be holding on forever." He hit pause in the same spot, the end of that line, 3 times. He had to force away the twinge of annoyance rising inside him, and shift back to the bright side. Making it this far was an enormous accomplishment, and this was the most difficult part of the song. The lyrics Branch sang moments before the incident occurred. So of course it was going to be the most challenging part to get past. This project song had been like climbing an increasingly steep cliff. And that one dreadful line, the final line before his grandma sacrificed herself for him, was at the very top of the hill. If he could make it to that point, and then the rest of the journey should be relatively flat and even ground. Fast forward to the 4th day, yesterday, the day before Branch and Poppy's scheduled double date with Smidge and Milton. Lately, it had been the same routine. Poppy would set her stereo down, snuggle beside him, then a few seconds later he'd press play. After he hit pause, they'd grab some snacks or drinks, or chat for a bit, or play some solitaire. This time, Branch decided to try something different. "Before I start the song, is it okay if... can we just sit here and cuddle for a bit?" He always wanted to start the song immediately, or at least as soon as possible, for fear that if he hesitated for longer than a few seconds, he'd wind up creating an excuse to not do it at all. But now that he was feeling more comfortable, it was less of a concern. Of course, Broppy would never refuse cuddling with Branch, no matter the reasoning. "Of course we can! Whatever you want to do." So Branch tenderly wrapped his arms around his pretty pink girlfriend, pulling her closer until she was sitting sideways in his lap. She wrapped her arms around his neck, her face pressed into his cheek, his muscular arms and large hands surrounding her body, until only her head and legs were visible. They stayed that way for a few minutes, unmoving, eyes closed, in silence. Finally, Branch opened his eyes. He glanced at his girlfriend out of the corner of his eye, and his heart swelled with joy. Her dark magenta eyelids still fully covered her eyes. And she had such a sweet little smile, so soft it caused the tiniest dimples to show. The way her little hand shifted down and was now resting on his chest. The way some strands of her hair had subconsciously spiraled around his. Every now and then, Branch had to remind himself that this pure-hearted, incredible, beautiful, vibrant magenta queen was his girlfriend. Never in his life had reality felt better than his dreams, and usually even his dreams had been rather dull. All the far-fetched goals she'd allowed him to reach, all the thoughtful things she'd done for him, all the times she's lifted his spirits, all the things he loves about her. If he had to list them all, it would take him 20 years. There wouldn't be enough paper in all of Troll Village. He never imagined sharing such a strong connection with someone, or loving one troll so much that it was almost overwhelming.
Poppy, I love you more than I could ever describe.
Feeling a surge of happiness, followed by a wave of comfort, Branch reached out one hand toward the stereo, and, feeling the most relaxed he's felt yet, he pressed play. Poppy's eyes instantly opened at the first note of the instrumental, but she stayed where she was, snuggled into him. And I need you now tonight. As the chorus began, Branch held Poppy tighter with one arm that was still around her. And I need you more than ever. His heartbeat increased, but his breathing stayed even. And if you only hold me tight. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. We'll be holding on forever. By now, Poppy was more tense than he was. The anticipation was almost making her dizzy. Was he going to hit pause? Or was he going to make it to the next line? And we'll only be making it right. Poppy's heart was thumping like crazy now. She could tell his was too, and he was trembling a bit. But he was not on the verge of panicking. She knew the signs. Branch was in control of his emotions. Was today the day? He held his breath. Time seemed to stop. He squeezed Poppy tighter. His mind was either ablaze with every emotion, or completely blank. It was hard to tell. He shut his eyes tightly. 'Cause we'll never be wrong. Together we can take it. Branch hit pause with a shaky hand. The breath he was holding escaped sharply and was followed by a couple of shaky gasps. Poppy was leaning back, watching him, trying to assess his state of mind. He was staring down at the floor with wide eyes, but the colour in his face was bright, not even slightly pale. He glanced around the room a couple of times, as if double-checking that there was really no danger. Slowly, unblinkingly, Branch turned his head to look at her, his bright blue eyes fully focused, his gape mouth gradually upturned into a shocked smile. Poppy mirrored his expression. She was so full of emotion that she could barely express it, and her excitement came out in a squeaky whisper. Branch, you did it!
I did it!
Was all he could stutter before he burst into sobs of joy. Still seated in his lap, Poppy twisted her upper body so she could wrap her arms up in a tight embrace. Branch held her tightly against him, pressing his face into her shoulder as his tears continued to fall. He felt weak with relief. He did it! He made it past that significant line. He still had a long way to go before he could get through the entire song, but he had made it to the top of the steep hill. He had completed the most difficult part of his journey. When Branch finally loosened his grip and Poppy leaned back, blue and fuchsia eyes were glistening. So much could have been said between them in that moment, but no words needed to be exchanged. Instead, with one hand on her hip and the other holding the back of her head, Branch gave Poppy a long and passionate kiss. After a few more minutes of peaceful cuddling, Poppy realized she needed to head out so she could get to Leggsy's dinner party on time. Before leaving, she asked Branch if he wanted to stay at her pod tonight, and was rather surprised when his answer was no.
I'm going to try to spend the night by myself. I feel fine. Actually, I feel great. I don't want you to think I'm turning you down, or isolating myself, or trying to push my limits again. And it has nothing to do with me worrying about being an inconvenience to you. This is something I want to do, because I finally feel like I can. And please don't take this the wrong way. Your support means the world to me. But I don't want to have to rely on you 24/7. I want to be able to deal with things on my own from time to time. You've taught me how to face my problems, and how to see the bright side, how to be strong. And that's why I feel comfortable being alone tonight.
Instead of being offended, Poppy looked proud. She placed her hand on his chest, over his heart, then leaned forward and kissed him. "You are so brave, Branch." He smiled, but let out a sniff.
I'm staying in my own bed after listening to a part of a song. That's not exactly brave.
"Yes, it is," Poppy argued, her hand gripping the fuzzy leaves of his vest. "Being brave doesn't have to mean fighting off a dozen tarantulas, or walking a tightrope above a spiked-filled gorge. This is a huge deal for you. You're facing your fears, and that's a very brave thing to do."
Branch smiled at her, but he saw a flicker of concern in her vibrant eyes.
Hey.
He placed his hand over hers.
I don't want you to worry about me, okay? I'm all right. I really am. And I promise, if that changes at any point, if I feel I can't handle my emotions, even if it's in the middle of the night, I'll come over to your pod right away. Trust me.
She kissed him again. "I do trust you, Branch. 100%. Back to the present, at the Smiling Taste Buds restaurant. Poppy had begun a quick chat with a yellow troll named Daisy, who happened to walk by their table. Meanwhile, Branch rested his cheek in his hand and just stared at Poppy. He didn't care if his half-lidded gaze was dreamy. His smile was probably extremely sappy too, but he didn't care about that either. Daisy standing right there, witnessing his love-struck stare directed at the Queen, giving him a few sly grins. Branch didn't care. That beautiful pink girl truly was one in a million. She was so much more than just his girlfriend. Poppy was his better half, his family, his most trusted friend, his inspiration, his biggest supporter, his soulmate, his life, his dream come true, his everything. When Daisy walked away, Poppy's attention returned to Branch. Even with her stunning fuchsia eyes on him, recognizing that he was gawking at her, her adoring gaze didn't falter. She chuckled coyly. "What?"
He sighed, still smiling. I was just thinking about how cute you look today.
She scrunched up her face, pretending to look offended.
"Today? Do I not look cute every day?"
Branch smirked at her sweet pink face.
You look beautiful every day.
Poppy crossed her arms, still trying to look hurt, but failing miserably, and counted.
"Oh, so I don't look beautiful on this particular day? Only cute?"
You look cute and beautiful, as you do every single day.
She giggled, but before she could make up another comment, a deeper voice spoke up.
Oh my god, you two are so flipping cheesy!
Branch and Poppy turned to find Smidge and Milton approaching. The Pink Queen crossed her arms and grinned slyly at her pint-sized friend.
"Ha! Look who's talking."
Smidge put her hands on her hips.
Hey, my snuggly sugar plum and I are not cheesy.
Branch, Poppy, and even Milton stared at her with a deadpan look. The tiny troll's shoulders drooped in defeat.
Yep, never mind. I just heard myself there.
All four laughed as Milton and Smidge took their seats across from Poppy and Branch. Almost instantly, a young waitress appeared. A sky blue troll with dark blue hair, green eyes, and a teal nose, wearing a green and yellow uniform. Welcome to the Smiling Taste Buds restaurant. My name is River Ann, and I hope your meal today will make you smile. Can I start you off with some drinks? Milton ordered first, in his soft voice.
A small iced tea, please and thank you.
Next was Smidge, in her not-so-soft voice.
1 extra large chocolate milkshake.
Branch went with his classic herbal tea, and then River Ann turned to the final troll. And for you, Queen Poppy? Before Poppy could answer, Branch spoke up.
Let me guess, a trollberry banana smoothie.
Poppy smirked at him.
However did you guess that?
Branch returned the smirk.
Gee, I don't know. Maybe because you've been going on and on for the last few weeks about how trollberry banana smoothies were your new favourite beverage.
Poppy crossed her arms.
Lucky guess.
She turned back to the smiling waitress. Yes, I will go with one of those, please. When River Ann returned with the drinks, Poppy glanced around at the crowded tables and commented to her,
Looks like your restaurant is doing very well.
River Ann smiled even wider. Yes, it is. Extremely well. Actually, this has been one of the slower days. As you know, my parents have wanted to open a restaurant since I was a kid. But thanks to you, they finally found the motivation to make that dream come true. Thank you again for everything you did for them, Queen Poppy.
You're very welcome. Are you still looking for workers?
Nope, your colourful posters did the trick. We even found a couple extra part-time workers. And you're right about Millie. She did an incredible job on the interior design.
That's so great to hear, River Ann.
But if you ever need help with anything else, just give me a shout. Branch found himself smiling yet again at his beautiful girlfriend and her enormous heart. Poppy truly was an outstanding queen, helping and inspiring others with her passion. To the village, she wasn't only their leader, she was their friend. She cared about each individual troll, regardless of their age, appearance, skills, flaws. She would give up every hair on her head just to see all of them happy. River Ann left the group to decide on their meals. Poppy picked up her menu, but when she caught Branch staring at her again out of the corner of her eye, she set the menu down with a warm-hearted sigh.
Now what are you smiling at?
You.
Yeah, I figured that, but why are you smiling at me?
Because I love you.
Poppy snorted.
I don't know if that's a sweet answer or a corny one.
Smidge answered for them, her turquoise hair and pink bow the only things visible above her menu.
Definitely a corny answer.
Branch ignored Smidge's input.
Do I need a good reason to smile at my girlfriend?
Poppy attempted.
Well, no, but...
Are you complaining about me smiling at you?
No, of course I'm not. I'm just saying that... I just meant... I was only...
Branch's smile turned into a wicked grin as she trailed off, and she pouted at him. I'm losing this argument, aren't I? Branch picked up his cup of tea.
Yep.
And took a long sip, while Smidge shook her head and Milton stifled a giggle. Poppy picked up her menu once again and teased Branch.
Well, if you're hoping for some lunch today, you might want to start looking at your menu instead of me.
By the time River Ann returned, Milton, Smidge, Poppy, and even Branch had narrowed down the options. They ordered their various dishes: soup and a sandwich, fish and chips, today's special pasta salad, and a gourmet garden salad. While waiting for their meals, the two couples exchanged conversations. Poppy and Smidge were busy discussing an upcoming slumber party, so Branch asked Milton how his critters were doing. They're doing very well. I was finally able to release Jessie, the little cuddle pup you brought in with a broken leg, and my glitterworm Geezer is miraculously recovering from her severe illness. Unfortunately, Harry is too old and frail to survive on his own in the wild, so I'll have to keep him through the winter. And since glowflies hibernate, I had to alter his crate so he'll be able to be properly protected when the cold weather hits. The veterinarian took a sip of his iced tea before continuing. I heard Rufus say that he and the other farmers will gather the last of their crops at the end of the week. How about you and your gardens, Branch?
Most of it is finished, but I still have several vegetable plants and one fruit tree to harvest. I'll probably finish them tomorrow. I don't like picking certain crops too early, because they'll preserve better if they're exposed to some cooler weather. However, I also don't want to leave them too long. If there's frost overnight, it could damage the crops, and they'll most likely rot before spring.
The girls had finished their conversation, so Smidge contributed,
I can't wait for the cold weather. Tobogganing, building snow trolls, snowball fights, skating, hockey, snow bug mobiling, skiing, festive holidays. I look forward to the winter activities all year round.
Poppy added excitedly, You said it, Smidge. A few more weeks and it'll be time to bring out the fuzzy blankets, scarves, earmuffs and leg warmers.
Milton nodded. My two favourite things about winter. Watching the beautiful winter hares hop gracefully through the snow, and enjoying a nice cup of hot chocolate by the fire.
Smidge turned to Branch.
What's your favourite part of the winter?
The turquoise troll hesitated.
Well, I don't know. I've always hated the winter, because to me it meant nothing but bitter cold, heaps of messy snow, and slippery ice. I'd spend 2 or 3 months cooped up alone in my bunker. But since things are different now, I might be able to enjoy winter this year. Well, I better have a list of your top 5 winter activities by the first day of spring. Will do, Smidge.
For the next 10 minutes or so, until their meals arrived, Smidge, Milton and Poppy took turns discussing fun winter activities with Branch, leaving him plenty of intriguing options. He doubted he'd have a chance to try every single thing in only one short season, but he'd give it his best shot. Because if he didn't, Smidge would make sure he did. While the 4 friends began to eat, Smidge started talking on a new topic.
So, Poppy, I was thinking, both you and Branch know all about me and Milton. How I confessed my feelings to him, what we did on our first date, the week-anniversary celebrations we had, our first dance under the stars, our first kiss outside of Milton's pod. But we barely know a thing about you two. Poppy, you've never once given me any details.
Poppy giggled. Sorry, Smidge, my bad. Before Branch and I officially got together, we were taking things really slow, since he was still adjusting to socializing and all. So we kind of kept our affections to ourselves until we made our relationship public. Then, with me becoming queen, I never had a chance to properly tell you the full story.
Well, you have the proper chance now. Details! I crave details!
Since Branch's response to Smidge's dramatic curiosity was laughter, Poppy gave in.
Oh, all right. What do you want? Or should I say, need to know, Miss Nosy?
As if she had rehearsed it, Smidge immediately asked with a solemn face.
Question 1. First date. And before you say anything, Branch, I'm aware this isn't technically a question.
Branch laughed.
I'm not saying a word.
To prove his statement, he took a large bite of his salad. Poppy answered Smidge's question.
Well, our first date was about a week after that second camp-out Branch attended. He organised a lovely picnic in the woods for us. He made me a special pie and beautiful flower arrangements. That's when he gave me that checkered blanket.
Smidge looked satisfied. Then her face hardened again as she turned to Branch.
Question 2. Who confessed to who? That's a question.
Branch let out a small huff of laughter, glancing down at the table with a hint of shyness, as he remembered that unbelievable roller coaster of emotions, life-changing night.
I confessed to Poppy. When? How? The day before the big breakfast buffet. I wrote her a poem.
As both Smidge and Milton ahed, it was Poppy's turn to act shy. Branch stated that so simply and humbly, as if he hadn't written a heartbreaking, meaningful, romantic poem that literally made her knees give out. She reread it many times since he'd given it to her. Again last night, in fact, and it still made her swoon. She literally had it memorized by now.
but it was still nicer to see his handwriting and read his words. Poppy recalled how nervous Branch had been giving it to her, how anxious he was when she approached him about it that night in his bunker, how he'd struggled to believe that she loved him too. Smidge ate a few fries, then turned to look back at Poppy.
Alright, so we know about your first dance, obviously. So, question 3. Your first kiss?
Poppy and Branch exchanged a quick glance, both blushing at the slightly awkward, very sweet and incredibly emotional moment. It was the Queen who replied, right after I told him that I loved him too.
Who initiated it?
Poppy gestured to her boyfriend, who was now staring at his plate with slightly lavender cheeks. Branch did.
Smidge's big blue eyes widened. Really? Oh. Wow. Sorry, no offense, it's just... I figured you would have, Poppy. Branch blurted out, well, she initiated our first real kiss.
Smidge's curious attention was instantly back on him.
I'm sorry, real kiss?
Branch groaned internally, though he was still smiling on the outside. Poppy was giving him a side glance with a crooked grin that said, ha ha, good job, you can answer that one. Even Milton was looking interested, so Branch stifled a sigh.
Our very first kiss lasted barely half a second. I wasn't even thinking when I did it, it was just a spur of the moment. Right after that, Poppy gave me a kiss, but it was also very brief. Then, at the second campout, we shared this longer kiss, which was initiated by Poppy.
Smidge and Milton awed again, to which Branch rolled his eyes. Then the tiny yellow troll smirked.
Okay, final question. I just thought of this one. Has King Peppy ever caught you two kissing?
Milton chuckled, nearly spitting out his soup. Branch looked up, and Branch looked like a startled animal.
I hope not.
Poppy shrugged her shoulders nonchalantly. Not that I'm aware of. Pretty sure he would have said something to me by now if he did. Smidge looked disappointed by Poppy's dull answer. However, the tough little troll did find some amusement in Branch's reaction. Once a few more relationship stories had been exchanged, their plates were empty. River Ann returned to clear their dishes and inform them of today's special dessert. Lava cake.
Ooh, lava cake!
Smidge cheered.
That does sound good.
Milton agreed, but I don't think I'll be able to eat a whole one.
That's okay, we can split one,
Smidge offered. Milton's dark green eyes stared lovingly at her.
Thanks, Smidgeabelle. You're so sweet you make sugar look sour.
Smidge giggled.
No, you're the sweet one.
Poppy turned to Branch. How about you, Branchifer? Want to split one with me?
Sure, I'm in the mood for trying something new.
Great, then we'll take... Hold on. Hang on a second. Poppy's tone shifted instantly. Branch, are you telling me you've never had a lava cake? The urgency of her tone made Branch raise an eyebrow wearily.
Is that a problem?
Yes, it's a problem. You have no idea what you're missing. You think chocolate fudge cake is good? Well, lava cake is 100 times better.
Okay then, one lava cake for us as well, please.
Splitting the cakes ended up being a wise choice, considering they were much larger than the 4 trolls anticipated. Indeed, the lava cake was very delicious, causing Branch to eat faster than Poppy. For the second half of the cake, the pair switched things up and started feeding each other. Milton noticed and said softly to Smidge,
Hey, that's one thing we haven't tried.
Smidge followed her boyfriend's gaze and smiled.
In her booming voice, she agreed, Oh my god, how have we not fed each other before? Yes, totally, let's do it.
Branch was watching them out of the corner of his eye, a little concerned for Milton's safety considering Smidge's typical roughness. However, as she raised the fork up to Milton's mouth, Branch had never seen Smidge behave so softly. It was downright strange to see the tough girl be as gentle as a butterfly. Poppy noticed where Branch was looking and read his mind. Smidge can be calm and gentle when she wants to be. She just usually doesn't want to be.
Smidge overheard, Being calm and gentle is such hard work. It's so much better and funner to be loud and aggressive and... She glanced nervously at Milton and stammered, not that I would ever be that way towards you, my honey boy.
But Milton was smiling fondly at her and put an arm around her tiny shoulders.
You know I love you exactly the way you are, my dream girl.
A few minutes later, all 4 trolls were leaning back in their seats, stomachs full to the point where they felt slightly uncomfortable, but not quite sick. River Anne came by to clear away their empty plates for a second time. And how will you be paying today? With this. Poppy stood up, reaching into her hair, careful not to disturb her shiny blue streamers or big blue bow. She pulled out a very high-quality decoration she made, containing the Smiling Taste Buds logo. It started out as a cube in the palm of her hand, and unfolded into a troll-sized, eye-catching poster. River Anne's eyes lit up as she accepted the payment. Oh, wow! This is lovely! It'll be perfect to hang over the main entrance. Thank you so much, Queen Poppy. You're welcome. Poppy started to reach back into her hair. As for the dessert... But River Anne stopped her. Nothing for the dessert. That one's on the house. Poppy blinked in surprise. What? Why? The blue waitress chuckled. Because it's the least we can do for you after everything you did for us. And don't even try to argue with me. My parents strictly told me not to let you pay for the cakes. Are you sure? Wow, thank you. That is so kind of you. Poppy made a mental note to make River Anne and her parents a thank you card. For the tip, Branch, Milton and Smidge each contributed. A handful of berries, a balloon and a small sticker sheet. River Anne was pleased with the generous tips and thanked them again. As the waitress took the dishes away, a bunch of dainty pings could be heard around the area. Hug time. Branch hugged the troll closest to him, Milton, so Poppy hugged Smidge. River Anne and another waitress paused their work to share a quick hug, then picked up their dishes and continued on their way. Every time Branch's dark green bracelet tinged, Poppy felt a spark of joy. She had asked her dad why he had never told her about it, and the former king's answer had been, I figured it would be nicer for you to discover it on your own. Whether he told you about it, or you suddenly noticed him wearing it one day. Me saying, hey, I gave Branch a bracelet, wouldn't have had the same amount of oomph to it. Once their hugs ended, Poppy addressed her 3 companions. All right, so what do you want to do now? Smidge opened her mouth, but Milton ended up speaking first.
Why don't we head down to the beach? Gaw, I was just about to say that.
That's a great idea, Poppy exclaimed. The final beach party of the year is taking place today at Colossal Lake. What do you say, Branch?
Sure, might as well enjoy the last of the warmth while we can. You said it! Smidge cheered. Good thing I brought my swimsuit.
Milton looked wary. It is a very nice day, but I think the lake's going to be too cold for me.
Branch shared his expression. Once the leaves change colour, I try to stay out of the water.
Don't worry, guys, Poppy sang. I don't plan to swim either. You, me and Milton can just chill on the beach in some comfy chairs while we watch Smidge and a few other brave souls take a dip.
Milton and Branch looked relieved. Smidge shrugged. Your loss.
River Anne, who had returned to wipe their table, contributed. It sounds like what most of the trolls are doing, just relaxing or playing in the sand. Although, from what I've heard, it doesn't sound like there's much beach left to enjoy. Poppy laughed. Jeez, there is that much of a crowd down there? River Anne shook her head, still smiling. Oh, there's still quite a crowd, but it's not that. The water level is very high. Half the shore is covered. Poppy, Milton and Smidge reacted with mild surprise. However, Branch's demeanour changed drastically. In the blink of an eye, he was alert, his ears perking up and brows furrowed. His voice was sombre to match. What do you mean? River Anne noticed his sudden concern, and her smile fell a bit. That's what many trolls have been saying, at least a dozen. They said they've never seen so much water in Colossal Lake. I'm sorry, that's all I know. Poppy placed her hand on her boyfriend's shoulder, the tenseness of it making her uneasy. Branch, what's the matter? Branch could feel his heart starting to beat faster, but he didn't want to jump to conclusions. No reason to panic yet. I don't know.
Hopefully nothing, but I do need to investigate this right away.
The seriousness in his blue eyes blocked out their usual warmth, and deterred Poppy from making a cheerful remark to lighten the mood. Branch may have been easily spooked back when he was grey, but he was quite laid back now, so he wouldn't make something out of nothing. However, he was still cautious Branch. He was sensible, knowledgeable, observant, and his primary concern was for the safety of the village. If he thought something could be wrong, it was definitely worth checking out. Poppy's tone was level.
Okay, then let's head down there right now. We'll see for ourselves what's going on, and then we can figure out if there's a problem or not. And if there is, we'll deal with it.
Her level-headedness and consideration made Branch smile, though his eyes were still tainted with concern. He responded that with nothing more than a slight nod, then hastily hurried off in the direction of Colossal Lake. Poppy hurried after him. Milton and Smidge exchanged a confused glance, but also followed along, trusting their turquoise friend's instincts. Branch didn't intend to be so curt, but despite his casual words, his stomach was churning, and he was quite certain it wasn't from the food. He had no evidence that trouble was brewing at Colossal Lake Beach, but he couldn't shake his gut feeling that something wasn't right.
End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Oh my god, that was emotional for many reasons, and one of them is very personal to me. Branch managing to get through it with powering that song, but also being overwhelmed when he tries to push himself too hard too fast. A lovely, lovely double date. I really liked that scene, and a big cliffhanger for next chapter. Now, for the personal bit, I myself had a massive anxiety attack yesterday, to the point where I actually fainted, or at least blacked out for a few seconds. I was in the bathroom because I needed to go to the toilet out of the nerves, and I was so shaky I didn't even lock it. I just finished drying my hands, and I was looking at the lock on the door, about to open it, and then next thing I knew I was on the floor and my brother was calling up to see if I was okay. The trigger was I was caught off guard by a YouTube short of a very graphic song with a very horrible meaning, and it took me a second to realise it. I'm a very empathetic soul who hates when negative things overwhelm me too much due to my anxiety issues, and I won't go into what the song was about or why it affected me so harshly, but it was a combination of at least 10 things that trigger me all at once, and before I processed it, I accidentally saw it 3 times in a row because of the way YouTube shorts repeat themselves, which it genuinely shook me. I threw up twice. I could barely walk. My brother came into the bathroom and actually had to help me walk to my own bed just so that I could sit down and relax, and I've barely eaten anything until dinner tonight. So I know exactly how Branch feels in these moments. Maybe not quite the trauma of seeing a grandparent sacrifice themselves, but the way those emotions can overwhelm your body. I mean, it's downright irritating for me because I haven't had an anxiety attack that bad in almost a year, maybe even longer. I've had 1 or 2 nasty ones, but never to that extent. You should have seen me 5 years ago. I had reoccurring ones for like months. It was horrid. But you can't help when these things trigger you, especially if it's unwarned. So you really are not weak for this happening. Everyone has chinks in their armour, and sometimes they're hit hard. So please, if this ever happens to you, know that there are people you can go to for help. Anyway, sorry to turn that so dark. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day now, whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and my binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.